Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our morning edition of Big Brother 22 All-Stars live feed spoilers. We are now witnessing the aftermath of the veto. It was really, I think, the best of times for a lot of people out there, celebrating and rejoicing in this fact that we finally have a little bit of a shakeup in the game.
We've been celebrating over here for sure. We're so happy for Devon that she won this power. But with that, might be coming something that's going to make us all cry.
This is where the worst of times comes into play, people. And it is really one of those situations where everything in Big Brother can be bittersweet. This week is very, very, very messy. And I think the reality is, while we kind of think we have an idea as to where things could be going right now, it could change like 4 or 5 as people could wake up and have some weird light bulb go off in their head that sends them down a wrong path. So we'll talk about where things are right now. But before we go further, if you do like this video, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell for more. And if you do want to support us further, check those links to our Patreon and also the store.
Okay, so this is where we are right now. Kevin is on the block. Tyler's on the block. Devon has the veto. David used his power. He has taken himself off the block. We will get more into the fallout of that because that has been pretty weird. But originally when we saw that Devon had won it, we were thinking that maybe she wasn't going to use it because it would put Danny in a really bad situation of having to nominate another person. And she has been building a relationship with Danny really, really well. And it feels like it's pretty mutual here. So would Devon then use it? At first I thought maybe she wouldn't. It wouldn't be in her best interest to hurt what she's building here with Danny and this side of the house. But she also doesn't want to lose Kevin.
That's where things get so interesting to me, and that's where over the past several hours I've kind of taken more and more of a stance of, okay, well, she should go ahead and probably use it. And there's a lot of different reasons for this, and I think a lot of it is delicate, but I think ultimately one of the big questions here is there a good chance that Tyler is going to stay regardless of who he's up on the block against?
I think it's pretty likely. I just don't think that the house is really ready to get rid of Tyler yet.
And I think because of that very thing, I think it makes more sense for Devon to be like, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep Kevin because I need to make sure I have someone who treats me as though I'm kind of his number one. And yes, Kevin can be shifty, Kevin can be untrustworthy, but look at the options that Devon has for potential close allies in the game right now.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin is shifty, but he is loyal, and we have seen that if you burn him, he can hold a grudge. So, would he hold a grudge? We don't know against Devon, but we have seen that in the past.
Yes. We have, and that is a big risk that she would have to take, leaving him up on that block and hoping that he stays, and hoping if he stays that he's not going to be mad at her. Like, there's a lot that has to go in to all of this, but it also just it does seem to make the most sense right now for Devon because based at least on a conversation that Cody and Danny had, it sounds like they don't have any intention of getting rid of Devon for the next few weeks. This is granted, provided that they're telling the truth to each other about sort of where they are in the game.
Yeah, and I feel like they probably are. They may feel that Devon is now an ally. I know that Danny has been putting it out there that they are working together now to some degree, and that she does really like Devon. And it sounds like this conversation with Cody, the pecking order doesn't really have Devon in it for a while. It's sort of, you know, getting out Kevin, getting out David, getting out Ian, getting out Christmas, getting out Tyler before Devon.
This is where things get dicey, everyone. This is where you have to prepare yourselves accordingly, because if Devon uses the veto, it sounds for now like Danny is going to kind of reluctantly, but ultimately she's going to put up Ian. And Ian is my favorite person in this game. I don't want to lose Ian, especially after everything that we've sort of talked about with Ian this past week. I mean, does it make sense for Devon's game to make this move and save Kevin? Sure, because Kevin's probably going to be more loyal to her directly than Ian is. Ian's got that complicated relationship with Nicole that I think is really hurting his game at this point.
Yeah, this is where it gets complicated for me as a person who's rooting for Ian and Davon because they are not working together. So I'm rooting for two people to stay in the game that aren't really working together. So this is where we land. And the thing about Ian is, and Cody said this weeks ago, Ian is really dangerous. And he is. Putting aside everything that happened with Memphis and Danny and Nicole and everything that happened, Ian is a dangerous player. This is very similar to the game that he played the first time where he kind of laid low and was really social with everyone for the first half, and then he just mowed everybody down for the last half. And we're getting into that last half.
Ian is incredibly dangerous, and the reality is that if we were playing to try to win Big Brother, as much as I love and adore Ian, and I do, I understand that putting him on the block and maybe getting rid of him at this point is a fairly wise move because he is going to be really, really dangerous down the road. The main thing that complicates it, and this is kind of a little bit of the diary room coming into play here, is that had Danny not gotten some sort of indication from the diary room, same with Nicole, that there may be issues because of comments that were made about Ian, I feel like Ian would for sure be the replacement nominee. There wouldn't be really any hesitancy at all. I think a lot of the hesitancy is Danny being concerned that the optics of this are going to look really bad in the event that, let's say we watch the show tonight and there's a segment about, Memphis making fun of Ian's autism. Then that's going to be a situation that Danny, certainly wouldn't want to deal with the blowback of.
Yeah, and I don't know that the show necessarily is going to show it because in the past we've had pretty bad stuff said on this show
a lot
that they've never shown on the show.
Yeah, that is a total toss-up. Like, it's all going to be up to what production wants to do for a given episode, and they're already going to have to play around with the editing somewhat to get that in there. So it's just far too early to tell if that's even going to be a factor. But it's a factor in terms of, I think, what is in Danny's mind, and what is in our minds at the moment is the complicated question of, okay, let's say you have this showdown. You have Ian up here, Tyler over here. What happens? Because I've tried to think a lot about this, where maybe you could end up in a situation where there's a 4-4 tie, because I think there's 8 people voting, and then Danny has to break the tie. Would Danny get rid of Tyler in that position, even though it's probably going to make a lot of people in the Blob Alliance, the committee, mad?
I think she should. I don't know if she would. I feel like she probably would, but I think she really should. Because if Tyler stays in this game and gets any kind of power and he can make Danny go, he will. Because he has been pushing that 4 weeks now, trying to get her on the block, trying to get her out the door. Danny needs to have Tyler go.
This week is just, and I don't fault Danny for what she did winning HOH at this time, because there's no way she could have predicted David using a power, Davon getting the power, but this is just a mess of an HOH reign for Danny at this point, because she wanted Tyler to be sort of a possible backdoor option. That way, at least there wouldn't be enough time and there wouldn't be as many variables to think about. But now, this is a situation where, if Tyler stays, he was already coming after her, so we don't need to act like that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
But is Tyler going to be able to sort of convince Christmas even more to try to go after her and basically just be, look at this, she put me on the block. Do you want to have something like that happen?
Yeah, because he already tried to get Christmas to put Danny on the block when she was HOH.
Yeah.
She did not go for it. She was not interested in it. She is friends with Danny. She likes Danny. So now Tyler could have a better argument to be able to be like, Christmas, look at what happened here. I was on the block. Are you now with me? Are you ready to ride Danny out the door, sort of thing? So I think that she could then finally be like, all right, Tyler, we'll get her out.
That is a risk. It feels like this entire weekend is just a game of Risk, where everyone is having to assess. By the way, I love Big Brother when it's like this. I love strategic decisions and this back and forth. Like, this is really, really interesting. And so we try to think, okay, who could actually go against Tyler if you put them up there?
Yeah, and it seems that we've come up with only really 2 people that if they end up on the block, that Tyler would actually go. And I don't know that Danny would put up either of those people. And it's Enzo, who I think would definitely stay. I don't think anybody wants Enzo out. And Cody. And nobody really wants to get Cody out. And I don't think Danny would use Cody as a pawn like that because in her mind, he's like one of her number ones.
There are times where I've sort of felt like Danny wanted Cody to win more than herself with how much info. I'm joking, but it feels like that's never going to happen. And if Cody gets up there, we've seen Cody be really cranky before in this game. Cody will just be like completely just irascible for the rest of the season. He will just be like, bro, I'm done with all of you. That's my Cody. I don't have a good Cody impression. I'm sorry, everyone. Enzo is going to be like, yo, you put me on the block. That's it. That's it, Danny. Yo, we're done, yo. Like, Enzo, I don't...
F-bomb, F-bomb.
Yeah, there's going to be F-bombs. Like, Enzo would stay, and Enzo, I think, is a nuanced player. But those really kind of are the only options. Because Memphis... people just don't like Memphis. I don't know if they're really going to for sure want to keep him.
No, I think that there's a chance that everyone else goes that's up against Tyler. And, I mean, there is a group of people that are trying to convince Davon or convince Kevin that he's going to be safe in this. And I don't know that anybody's really buying it. But, there are some people that are trying.
Yeah, because, Danny doesn't want to have to put somebody else on the block, ultimately. She's not really looking to. I mean, if Kevin goes in that situation, Kevin just goes. But it's like, Christmas is just like trying to straight up lie to people and trying to just basically make Kevin feel like it's okay, that he will stay, that people are turning on Tyler, that all of this stuff is, Christmas, you're not a good messenger for this, by the way.
No, I don't feel like Kevin's going to really believe anybody except maybe if Davon sells that story. And I don't think Davon is going to be selling that story.
I think a part of the problem here is that these people have been either lied to or screwed over so many times by the Blob Alliance already. They're not just going to buy what sort of information is thrown at them. I think, there is a chance, I guess, that Kevin stays if he stays on the block at this point. But for all the information that we know now, it just feels too risky for Davon to lose someone who is going to potentially be a number 1 for her in the game.
Yeah, and Danny wants Tyler out. I mean, she's made it pretty clear to the people a little bit closer around her at this point, but she's not voting, so it doesn't really matter what Danny wants unless she's the tiebreaker.
I'm going to try to just send brain waves into the house now. Don't put Ian up on the block. Don't do this to me at this point. Come on, guys.
I think we are gonna have to put on our hard hats.
I don't want to.
It feels like it's coming.
I am going to smash my hard hat into the ground and imagine that this isn't happening.
No, I feel like this is probably the likely scenario that is happening. So we will get ready.
I will go and cry.
To maybe say goodbye to Ian. Ian, it's possible, could possibly work some magic.
Yeah.
With the help of Nicole, if Nicole is willing to do something because she is close with Danny, she is close with Ian. I mean, is it possible? Maybe. I just don't know how much Nicole's going to stick her neck out for him after what we had seen. And I know that production has spoken to her about sort of her participation in everything that happened with the Memphis thing. Maybe she will go really hard for Ian and try to make up for what she participated in.
It's certainly possible, and it is one of many storylines to follow throughout the day. The other sort of big news, other than seemingly another wall yeller, which I don't really care about that much, and there's enough other really good stuff at this point, and it doesn't seem like the wall yeller had some huge seismic impact on the game anyway. So ultimately, the other thing is David decides, you know what, I'm gonna tell some people now. I guess now that the veto is played or whatever else, he feels okay to clue in Kevin and Davon that guess what? You know that terrible lie that I told about somebody else using the power on me? No, it was me. I had the power.
Yeah, and then after Devon was alone in the room, she did kind of let us know that she still doesn't trust him, and she really shouldn't. And I mean, he's not a target for her or anything, but it's very difficult at this point in the game to really trust him, especially since he just lied about this power to everybody, and then it's like, oh, by the way, sorry, I lied.
David, okay, this is time for our regular David segment here, where ideally you would want to see David and Kevin and Davon work together, because you need people like Davon and Kevin to have a little bit more cover, and we know David, the Blob Alliance, is going to cast him aside at some point anyway, probably soon, and he's just screwed himself over a lot by everything that sort of happened earlier in the game, by being too close to Tyler and the bros, and that made Davon not want to trust him, and then David was more gung-ho about Bailey than her when they were on the block together, and then he lied about the power at first, so he's just like, he's gotten like 3 strikes against him, unfortunately, at this point.
David just needed to pick an alliance and ride with the alliance. Like, I understand that he was in a bit of a situation with what was going on where Davon wanted to bring him in as well, but he needed to just pick a road and ride on that road, because instead he just burned all the roads to the ground.
David has no roads anymore. He's
just on the side of the road.
He's on the side of the road trying to drive the clown car across some grass, and it's not moving very fast. David is just, I mean, I think ultimately maybe he and Davon and Kevin can kind of sort of work together because they don't have a lot of like other real options, but David's just going to have to win HOH and not put Davon on the block or something so that they can really build some like real trust there at this point.
I'm just glad that if I'm going to lose Ian, that Davon is in a much better spot now, because after that conversation with Cody and Danny talking about the fact that Davon is nowhere on the radar for a while, that is good news to me, because I just really like her. I know that she doesn't win a lot of comps and stuff like that, but I just find her very endearing, and I just really like her. So
I want to keep Davon. I also want to keep Ian.
I would also like to why can't they just work together?
Yeah, let's just, like, I think they're aware that they may need to, but it's just, this Nicole thing. All right, well, we'll conclude this video now and how emotionally conflicted we now are moving into the rest of the day, but ultimately, if it's Ian versus Tyler on that block, do you think that Ian has a chance of staying? You know, Tyler's a very good player. Both of them are going to make good campaigns. Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you do like this video, give us a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and support us further. Check those links to the store, our Patreon, and we'll see you here next time.